we need to take a few conscious breaths and bring ourselves into presence. Let's take 3 conscious breaths. And with a deep in-breath, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. What's mine is mine. Or is it? What's mine is mine. And what is mine? We asked this question last week, and I remember some of the answers were my body, my soul, my beliefs. Any new answers this week? What is mine? What is mine? What comes up for you? What is mine?
Responsibility for one's actions.
Responsibility for one's actions. That's mine. Anything else? What is mine? Don't we have a long list of things we declare? This is mine. That's yours. And this is mine. We have a long list, don't we? What is mine? We have a long list. What is mine? From the Bhagavad Gita, the Song of the Lord. We're going to jump ahead to where we left off last Sunday, which is this sloka, chapter 6, number 33. This is after we heard the voice of the incarnation of the Lord, Krishna, giving advice. Now, Arjuna, the great prince, speaks, and he speaks for us when he says, Krishna, you say that equanimity of mind is yoga. Peace of mind is yoga, or union with the divine. But I do not see how that is possible, because the mind, by nature, is constantly changing. Anyone not agree with that? The mind is constantly changing. My mind sure jumps around a lot. Arjuna goes on. He says, not only is it restless, Krishna, the mind is often turbulent and powerfully obstinate. Obstinate. We know when the mind is turbulent, don't we? It's when it goes from here to there, even when we may not want it to. And we talked last week about the obstinacy of the mind. Oh, the mind seems to have a mind of its own and just start thinking thoughts willy-nilly without us seeming to have any control over it. Powerfully obstinate. Trying to control the mind is like trying to control the wind. And we talked about this. So Arjuna makes a statement. It's really tough to control the mind. Before we listen to what Krishna responds, I thought we might do a little exercise. Exercises are good because when we just listen to these messages intellectually, we get it on one level. But when we do an exercise, we experience it on a different level. Are you ready for a little exercise? Okay. In order not to be distracted during this exercise, I suggest that we get ourselves grounded, our butts firmly placed in the bottom of our chair, our feet in touch with Mother Earth. And now gently allow your eyes to close so we're not distracted by what we see. There's 2 parts to the exercise. Ready for the first part? Here we go. The first part of the exercise is to let your mind think whatever it wants to think. Give it free rein. Go ahead and observe what the mind thinks. Everyone's mind is thinking, right? Observe the thoughts the mind is thinking. And give the mind permission to think whatever it chooses to think. And now, let's give thanks to the mind for having so many thoughts it thinks on our behalf. So we can have the thought, thank you to my mind for thinking all the thoughts you think. And continue giving your mind permission to think whatever it chooses to think. And observe. Well, that's enough thinking. So that's the end of part 1. So I'm guessing everyone has a mind and everyone had some thoughts. And maybe you were able to observe those thoughts during that process. Ready for part 2? All right, part 2. For part 2, I suggest we do the same thing, get our feet grounded on the floor, and perhaps allow our eyes to close gently so we can focus. And now I would like you to take control of your mind and repeat the following to yourself in your mind. Om Shanti. Begin. Keep repeating Om Shanti in your mind. Okay, that's enough for part 2. You can now stop repeating in your mind Om Shanti. The 2 parts of this exercise are meant to demonstrate, 1, it's up to us to give permission to our mind to wander, and we can do that. And we can be accepting and grateful for whatever the mind chooses to think. Part 2 is an exercise in controlling the mind and having the mind think just what we want to think. Now, sometimes when we attempt to control the mind, it's like trying to control the wind, and the mind is obstinate and doesn't continue thinking just what we want it to think, but rather thought some other things as well. Yes?
I understand the concept of what we were doing as an exercise to get control of our thoughts, but it doesn't really qualify as self-control because we have you to coach and guide us through it. So it would be a completely different story if it was us trying to do it alone without anyone, when you're truly alone with your thoughts. It's completely different than when you have someone to talk you through it. Do you know what I mean?
I do. It is easier when you have a facilitator and feel the energy and presence of command from someone else to do something. It's empowering when someone else gives you an instruction. And as you point out, when we try to do this ourselves, it might be a different challenge. So I encourage you, if you want to investigate this line of thought, to try this on your own. I do this as a practice. When I take my morning walks, I know my mind has some blessed things it wants to think and some things about which it wishes to inform me, and I don't want to suppress it. So for a certain portion of my walk, until I come to a certain place, I allow my mind to think whatever it wants to think and go with it, see what it thinks. Often it thinks some things that are very useful for me. It brings up some new ideas. I'm a writer. I write poetry. Sometimes I go to bed at night having written something and something's just amiss in some spot. And in the morning, when I allow my mind to think, often it comes up with some amazing solutions or suggestions. Then in another part of my walk, I attempt to try and take control of my mind. And I notice that I'm faced with varying level of success. Sometimes, for that whole episode, I'm able to pretty much have the mind think what I direct it to think. And other times it just skips away and starts thinking about the advice it gave previously or some other things it wants to think about, and I have to notice it. And sometimes it's hard to notice. Sometimes it takes me a while to notice. And when I notice, which I usually do eventually, I'll bring the mind back to what I wish it to think. For me, control of the mind is not an absolute thing. It's not like one day I didn't have control and finally I got control, thank you God. No, rather it's a process. And as Satchidananda would say, it is a practice. A practice is something we do repeatedly. And the goal is not what we might want to call perfection. The goal is rather to be committed to practice. So let's see now what Krishna is going to say when Arjuna said, this is really tough. And remember, Arjuna has invited Krishna to guide him. So he's not going to get some unsolicited advice. Krishna says, then the Lord said, O mighty Arjuna, undoubtedly the mind is restless and very difficult to control. So he acknowledges Arjuna's objection. He doesn't say it's impossible, though, does he? Just that it's restless and difficult, but with steady practice, which we just talked about, and non-attachment, it can be obtained. It is possible. And the two pillars of achieving a controlled mind is steady practice and non-attachment. I made a little figure to demonstrate that. I like figures. They help me remember things. So you see at the top is yoga. This is the temple of union with God. So how can we enter that temple and reside in the temple where we are united with God in yoga? We have to pass through the two pillars, steady practice and non-attachment. We just talked about practice. Now we're going to talk about non-attachment. That's a big one. Notice that in the diagram, I left some things outside of the temple that I might be attached to. I left my body out there. That's the stick figure there. Not being attached to my body. I am attached to my body. How can I find the experience of having a body but not being attached to it? We all know I'm attached to my vehicle. Since I was born in Los Angeles, I'm a Los Angeles guy, attached to my car. How can I leave what does it look like when I leave attachment to my car behind? What does that look like? It doesn't mean that I don't care for it or take care of it. It just means that in the event the good Lord chooses to take it away, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And I can be comfortable with the way things are, having it or not having it. There's a little quote mark there. You see that? It shows up in the comic books. That's a thought bubble, isn't it? Can I not be attached to my thoughts? In the little exercise, we let the mind wander. We had some thoughts. Can I just have those thoughts and not be attached to them? Notice they're just what the mind does. During the control part, when I made an attempt, successful or not, to just have the mind repeat Om Shanti, I can look at my experience there and see what happened, and yet can I not be attached to the result? See that? Can I not be attached to the result? Meaning, if my mind just stayed on Om Shanti the whole time, and I did a great job, am I going, that a boy? That a girl? Did a good job. It may be harder to do when I'm by myself, but I did that one real well. See the attachment there? Or can I just notice, well, the mind did a pretty good job there. Stuck with Om Shanti a little bit and wandered a little bit. And all is okay. I'm okay with what happened. I'm okay that it stuck with Om Shanti for a while. I'm okay that it wandered for a while. I was just keeping track. Non-attachment. And finally, we have many attachments to our place of living, our community, our city, our state. Don't we all root for the Nats? That's our city's baseball team. And it's
more a hockey guy, Caps.
Caps. Or the Redskins. Not too much the Redskins. And isn't it fun to root for our team? It's fun. We kind of take it seriously, but a part of us doesn't take it 100% seriously, unless you're really not so. Some people are really into it, rooting for the Caps or Nats, Redskins. But others of us just take it as a fun thing to do because it satisfies a part of us, our desire to be attached. And that attachment expands even farther to our state, to our nation, the flag there. We are attached to our flag, my country, right or wrong, my flag. And even if we're not totally attached to the flag, we certainly have seen some people who are really attached to the flag. It's something, for example, that's taught to soldiers, people in the military, using the flag as a symbol of attachment to honor and country. So not being attached to flag and country means not that we don't respect who we are and where we live and are grateful, but we're not attached to it in the sense that it's okay for us in any other place be just as great for whoever's living there. So that I can appreciate the French being just as happy to be French and sing the Marseillaise, and the Germans, the Italians, the Brits, all the different countries that come to mind. I'm just as happy that people in Iran are happy to be in Iran, love their country, grateful to be there, happy for them. So, to experience divine union or yoga, we need to have steady practice And we need to look at what we're attached to and see how we can loosen the bonds. What I picked for the subject of the talk, what is mine, is not, of course, the truth, is it? What is mine is never mine. What seems to be mine actually belongs to the universe or to God, even my body. I'm just a caretaker. My job is to take good care of my body. My job is to take good care of my country and my group. My job is to take good care of my thoughts. Do my best through practice, not being attached to them. Through this path, the scriptures say, we will come to a place where more and more we will experience that absolute peace and that feeling of waking up in the morning with some joy. Just joy. Do you know there's a little exercise, since we're doing exercises today, which we can do to help us experience that peace and joy. And it's a very simple one. You ready for the next exercise? This is just a 5-second exercise. Are you ready? All right, here you go. Just allow the corners of your mouth to rise up in a little smile. Little smile. That's it. A little more. A little more. Now just notice what's going on as your mouth is in that smile. Just notice. Be the observer. Your mouth is smiling. Well, I don't want to burden you with smiling, so that's enough of that exercise. Now, can any of you report the difference between what you experienced when you're smiling, had that little smile on your face, versus what you're experiencing just before? Any observations?
Maybe laugh.
Maybe laugh. What's the difference in the way you were feeling when you just put a little smile on your face? And you observe that. The famous saint, Ramakrishna, said one time he was in the presence of another famous saint, and this man always had a slight smile on his face. And he saw and had this sudden shaft of enlightenment that having a smile was a way to help train the body to be in that divine union that he sought. And ever after, Ramakrishna had a slight smile on his face all the time, maybe even when he was sleeping.
Why exactly?
Look at your own experience when you had that slight smile on your face. Look at how it made you feel. And if you want to see a contrast, put a severe frown on your face, like this. Everybody go like that. See how you feel. Have you ever looked at the newspaper and seen people in public life? And sometimes, particularly leaders, have that look on their face where the corners of their mouth are drawn down. Notice that? I notice it. Wow, they're having a tough day, aren't they? They're having a tough day. I've noticed it when leaders have been accused of things that they are perhaps not proud of. I've noticed that. So you can look and see how it makes you feel. So how did it make you feel when you had that slight smile on your face?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Oh. I could feel, like it was easier to smile as I was smiling than initially doing it, but I could also feel that it did impact me slightly. Like, it doesn't make you happy, but it can at least increase your mood. It draws in some positive vibrations, I guess. So.
Increase your mood and draws in positive vibrations. There you have it. That's it. So if you want to increase your mood and draw in positive vibrations when things are the other way, just be committed as a steady practice. Here's another steady practice to put just a little smile on your face, especially when no one's around. Just put a little smile on your face and see what happens. And see if that satisfies one of the tenets of your commitment to a steady practice. These are all things we can choose to see if they work for us or don't. Okay? Other questions about the two pillars to the temple of divine union? All right. I think this is the last sloka before we see some commentary. Success in yoga, which is self-realization, is extremely difficult if you cannot control your mind. That's what the sloka says. Controlling the mind is a step towards success in yoga. But if you persist and control your mind and earnestly strive for realization using the right methods, you will certainly be successful. The sloka says, go for it. If you have a steady practice and are committed to non-attachment, you will certainly be successful. So that's encouraging, isn't it? That's encouraging. We need some encouragement. All right, let's see what Swami Satchidananda has to say about all this. Arjuna says to Lord Krishna, the mind is continuously turbulent. Don't you think it's difficult to control? Satchidananda is repeating that. No doubt it's very difficult to control, Krishna agrees, which probably gives Arjuna little consolation. And then he continues, but if you have both practice and non-attachment, you can do it. Again, emphasizing, if you have practice, steady practice and non-attachment, you can do it. If this is something you want to do, you can. Yes, it's very hard to control the mind, so you yourself have to see what that means for you. Is it hard or isn't it? Where are you with it? Most people report it's hard, difficult. Yes, it's very hard, but just remember, by continuous practice and enough non-attachment, certainly it can be controlled. So those are the two legs. So we're encouraged to follow the two legs so that we can experience more and more and more that spiritual peace all the time. And that feeling of joyfulness that we may experience when we raise the corners of our mouth in a little smile. It's difficult, but it is possible. That's the beauty of it, he says. What's the use of doing anything that's too easy? Anybody can do it. Here he's challenging those of us that like to be challenged. The glory comes only when you do something others can't easily do. The glory is when you do something others can't easily do. Go for it. And it is possible to achieve anything if you practice continuously, not just one day a week, or 5 minutes in the mornings and evenings, while the rest of the time you do anything you want. So a practice means a steady practice. Not just 5 minutes in the morning and 5 minutes in the evening. Just a steady awareness that this is the direction I want to head in. Always keep your high aim to control the restless mind. Always. Always keep your high aim to control the restless mind. If you meditate for 10 minutes a day and then just leave the mind uncontrolled to go where it wants the rest of the day, no, hold on a second. I think it's perfectly okay to give it a slot of time to go where it wants to go. I think that's a positive practice. In a way, that is control, isn't it? Who's in charge? I'm in charge. Go ahead and think what you want. Well, Satchidananda puts it a little differently. If you just leave the mind uncontrolled the rest of the day, it's like holding the rudder for only 10 minutes, then leaving the boat uncontrolled, letting the wind toss the boat any way it wants. This is his analogy. Are we rudderless throughout the day? And are we just steering during 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night?
I want to take a picture of that one, actually. That is a very profound metaphor.
Are we holding the rudder for only 10 minutes, leaving our boat uncontrolled, letting the wind toss the boat any way it wants? The wind. The mind is like is as uncontrollable as the wind. No, only if we let the wind blow it. That way, if you let the wind blow you around, you'll never reach the other shore. And what is the other shore? More and more, just feeling grounded all the time. Grounded, like you are in exactly the place you ought to be right now. And things, as you observe them working out right now, are actually working out just the way they're supposed to work out. It's like you're that guy on Mars looking down at blue Mother Earth with the cloud cover and saying, wow, isn't that interesting how things are working out down there? Well, that's just the way it's supposed to be because that's the way it is. In other words, we're having faith in the way things are. That way we'll reach the other shore. That's why constant vigilance is necessary. Somebody must always hold the wheel and watch the compass. Are you going in the right direction? If by chance you make a mistake or are caught by a wind, then you correct your course. It's just like in meditation when you have decided, all right, I'm going to focus on Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om Shanti. I wonder what I should have for breakfast when I finish my meditation. Actually, yesterday I had some eggs. Today I think I'll have some cereal. Oh, I'm all out of milk. Well, that's okay because after breakfast I'll go to the store and get some more milk. Maybe I'll have toast instead with some butter and oh, then you notice. The wind took you off course. Oh, constant vigilance. Back. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. Om Shanti. That's the progress. So, steady practice is just the practice of bringing the mind back when it wanders and you haven't given it conscious permission to. It sort of took control on its own. And you correct your course. Immediately, the navigator works out the course correction. Without that course correction, you can never reach the destination. So by constantly making those little course corrections, you are on track for the destination. Doesn't matter if your mind takes a wander when you didn't plan it that way. You just do a little course correction and you are on the path. Any questions or comments about that? Well, I have. It's about 4 minutes to 11. So it's time for us to close anyway. Shall we do our little closing practice by focusing on the breath for 3 focused breaths, in and out. And with a deep in breath, Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.